Hi, welcome to Screenchat. Thank you for watching. Chris Oliver Taylor started his career at BBC London and then immigrated to Australia in the year 2000. Now he's Managing Director of Matchbox. Chris, tell us the origins of Matchbox.
5 really strong individual producers got together just before Screen Australia started their enterprise scheme, which was about investing in good businesses. Matchbox took advantage of that, came together. They were in the first wave of companies to get the money. That allowed them to start to build their brand. And then NBCUniversal came knocking in end of 2010, early 2011, and bought a stake in the company. At the same time, the guys were producing the slap for the ABC and also the straights for the ABC and a few other bits and pieces as well. So it gave them a great footing. And then NBC came in to start to invest in the longer term development. So now, kind of 4 or 5 years on, you're seeing midway through a journey of a lot of development and quite rapid expansion, and then lots of titles. So we're producing, 10, 12 shows a year at the moment, but that's as a result of 22 people pushing shows for 5 years.
How do you see the future going forward, the landscape of independent producers trying to produce, competing?
I think there's a few ways to answer that. The fundamental one is the market's changing, and whether it's Matchbox in this position or whether it's someone else, the financing of television shows and to a degree films, but this is mainly about TV, is focused around a mixed model of financing. So there's always international money in every TV drama that you see on TV. I can't think of one there wouldn't be recently. And it comes in the form of distribution. NBCUniversal bought into Matchbox because they wanted effectively a first look at their distribution slate. So rather than shows go to market and then buying in later, they just buy the slate. So there's risk in there. You get some good ones and some ones that maybe don't work, but you get a slate. So even if Matchbox weren't doing this, there'd be others still doing it. I think if you look at the consolidation of independent production in the UK, where they're 10 years maybe ahead of where we are, and you see many, many indies being bought up by, be that Shine or be that NBCU or be it Sony, ITV, buying a mixture of companies, and they're just building what we've got here in the ecosystem of Australia. They're building a multi-layered approach to production companies. So they're buying a factual company, a drama company, a reality company, a comedy company, and having a slate of shows, which that mothership company, be that Sony or NBCU or maybe Indigo or Shine or Fremantle, they then are taking a bet on the slate. And no doubt some shows work, some don't. We're not indifferent here. The key for the smaller indies, I think, is distribution is the key. Every show needs international money. Every show is getting harder to finance domestically. Funnily enough, I wouldn't say it's easy internationally, but the doors are open, with Netflix and Amazon coming in our market soon, and that plethora of content being produced. Maybe it's easier to finance internationally now than it ever was. I don't know, more competition. But certainly if you're a small indie or you're a one-man band or you're a small company, trying to partner with us, we want partners. We want to work with all the time. Yep. The 5 founders of the company, there's 4 still in the company. Helen Bowden moved on to start her own small indie, I think working with Shine, which is great. They come from independent spirit. They're highly regarded. These are not, this is about the storytelling for us as well. Yes. So we do want to work. We very much value, we are part of the Australian landscape. And it's very important. There's a strong mix of production companies. Matchbox is one of them.
And what are the challenges that you've faced working as the Managing Director for Matchbox?
I think at different stages, different times. I think in the first year, it was all about trying to make sure that NBCUniversal and Matchbox understood each other. And NBCUniversal understood the market here and what that meant, that Matchbox understood that the shows had to sell internationally. That was the major remit here. I think as we've gone on, it's been about volume versus quality, making sure we get both right. I think we've done a pretty good job at that. That's been a constant challenge as we push more and more shows, have done, maintain that quality, which was set by the slap and also by the legacy of Tony Ayres and Helen Pankhurst and Michael McMahon, to ensure that actually the show they made as individual producers and the show they made initially as Matchbox stand the test of time in 5-6 years' time. So the shows we make now have got to be as good, hopefully, as they made shows.
How can the little people compete with the international market?
Well, I think best ideas still win. I think that there's some great production companies and great producers who get shows away. The Secret River by Ruby is 2 great guys who made a great show. and it stood up to international acclaim as it should do, and won every award going, and fantastic. So there's a single example of how it still works fine. There'll be others as well. The team behind every cloud, where there's two plus a few people around that company with Fiona and Deb, that's not a huge infrastructure, but they make some great shows. They know what they're doing, and they're not backed by a big international financier.
No.
So it can work in the ecosystem. I think that the days of, I'm not sure the days ever existed actually, really, the days of everyone being owned by a local player in Australia, and that was it. I don't know they're going to return. Maybe they will. The world moves, and it is what it is. But I do think that Australia has a strong place to play internationally, and because of that, and because of the kind of storytelling we can tell, and the actors that we can all bring in, that international money comes into Australia, and we think it does create jobs for Australians. It creates Australian IP, it creates Australian content, and the slate of our shows is pretty unique. You look at Devil's Playground and The Family Law, and then Deadline Gallipoli and Max and Choppage and Glitch. These are a range of content that no one can say we're making, American focused content. We're making Australian stories about a whole range of different stories, different ideas, different genre, and we want those stories, and they have to sell internationally, and we think they do.
What I think is great as well, you guys produce Family Law. Are you guys going to continue on doing some more diverse shows like that?
Well, I think it goes back to the DNA of Matchbox way before my time. Tony Ayres and Penny Chapman, two of the, I don't know, most revered producers in the country, I think. And I think built into, Tony's a Chinese Australian, so there's a natural inbuilt view of the world that he would hold.
Yeah.
I think that the creative drivers of someone like a Penny or a Helen Pankhurst or a Michael McMahon, those four founders are still in the company now. I think Hannah Bowden also exactly the same. Comes from a place of showing the world as it is. And it's not about conforming to a view that, this is how Australia looks like, the beach blonde and the good-looking hunk of Home and Away. Nothing wrong with that at all. Totally fine. Yeah. It's just not a show that we could make. So what we can naturally make are really strong stories. And I think Family Law came out of just a natural conversation between Tony and Benjamin Law, who we've read the book. Again, predates me. It was in development 4 or 5 years ago. But was something that resonated with Tony. And he wanted to tell the story. There was a story. There was nothing else to create. It was Ben's life. Nothing's forced.
Yeah.
We love the idea. We love the story. Ben's a huge talent. You cast as you cast. So really important we do that. And I think we do it more. We continue to cast and find writers and producers in as diverse a way as we can. It's really important to Matchbox. Because
Matchbox is linked with NBC, what was the dynamics at the first instance when they approached Matchbox?
NBCUniversal were looking for a foothold in Australia in 2010. They were looking for English language territory. So they own a company, or part own a company in Canada. They own a bunch of companies in the UK, and they own some different JVs in America, most notably Working Title, who make Bridget Jones's Babies out currently. And they work with a guy called David Heyman, who's the producer of Harry Potter. So they've got these big plays in the US, UK. They've got some other companies in the UK, including Carnival, who make Downton Abbey. And then they've got Lark, a company in Canada. And then with us, the other, territory to look into was Australia. And so they were looking around. They spoke, I think, to a few people before my time. Didn't either find anyone or didn't find a deal to be done, whatever reason. They came back a year or so later, at the end of 2010. NBCU found this show called Bogan Pride, which was Rebel Wilson's arguably major break in Australia. A comedy, a pretty outlandish comedy for SBS. And it just happened this exec at NBC loved it and tracked down who made it, and it was Tony Ayres and Michael, and Peter Templeman directed, and went to dinner with them. And they kind of found that they had a relationship straight away, and so NBC said, what else are on your slate? There's the Slap sitting there, which is a pretty good calling cards. And then what Tony was asked to do was bring the founders together. They met in Sydney as a group, had a restaurant, and NBC walked in and said, we want to buy you. And that was it.
Wow.
There's probably more due diligence that went on, or definitely went after. But I think before that, it was just a meeting of creative minds. They needed to connect creatively. And that show, Bogan Pride, which you wouldn't think necessarily be an NBCU show, was the connecting force.
So now that they own the company outright, where are they left with the rights?
NBCU bought into the company to do one thing, distribution. What they are looking for, which is what everyone's looking for when they buy in. So if a Sony buys in a Playmaker, or Warner Brothers set up here, they're looking at two things in that example. Can they produce their own formats? So if you're an entertainment producer like Warner's might be, I think they've got The Bachelor and, First Dates, I think could be theirs. They make their own shows locally. That makes sense. The other play and the major fundamental play is distribution. It's getting in early. It means that rights aren't being competitive. They're not on the market. That you can then work with a creative company, NBC to Matchbox, to find a slate that they can sell internationally. That's the model.
Can you talk about your role, your responsibilities?
My job's very easy now. I've got a fantastic kind of exec team around me. We've got some wonderful creators and we put structures in place, which is simple. We've got a strong business affairs team. We've got 4 in-house lawyers and business affairs managers to do various deals. We've got a very strong development team run by Debbie Lee, who's the former head of comedy at the ABC. We've got our finance team led by Tom Chatwin, and then we've got our production by Helen Pankhurst. Those key planks, they run the business. A number of those people, Kylie, Debbie, Tony, Penny Chapman, with myself, we're looking at the next opportunities. So we're constantly looking at Debbie and Kylie are focused on the 17 slate, so setting up shows for there. And I'm trying to look at the 18-19 slate, trying to push out again what opportunities are around, what's going on in the world, what do we think networks might want, who should we be trying to work with, trying to find ways to do things.
What our audience looking for now, trying to sell internationally? What kind of stories do we need to sell?
Look, I think it's a really good question. None of us know the answer totally, because if we did, it'd be very easy, wouldn't it? I think there's a contradiction in the answer as well. So my view is this, with no backing whatsoever, it's just a view. Then I think we need to make Australian stories, because we're in Australia, but they've got to be internationally focused. So, and the reason why I say that, and the kind of caveats around that are this: if you try and make a US show from here, so you're trying to copy a US show or trying to be, too clever. The US market produced something like 500 titles last year, 500 series. The year before was 450. If you go back, say, 10 years, they've had 130. So this plethora of US content is in the marketplace. Some good, some bad, no doubt, but all of it US. US focus, US accents, US actors, and probably bigger budgets than the shows that we might have here. So to compete with them like for like is probably foolish. Some will say not, but I think it is for us anyway. But if you make a very, very Australian show, which points just to us with no reference point back out in the world, very hard to sell as well, because you are competing with every single possible show that's out there. You're now competing with all the back catalogues of shows, be on Netflix or Amazon or many other places, and you're also competing with the new shows that are coming out. So for us, we look at shows that, one, we love. We have to have someone in the company who loves the idea, who is passionate for the idea, who will fight. So if you don't have an auteur, we tend to drop them. Nearly it's always a partnership with a writer or a partnership with a producer, but someone in the company has to love it, because it's really hard to get shows to come to life. So if you don't love it, then why bother? And then secondly, it's about how we construct the show. So you can make an Australian show with an international focus in a bunch of ways. You can do what we did with Secret City, unashamedly Australian. It's about Australian politics. It's quite complex and quite deep and dark about Australian politics. Yet it had Jackie Weaver sitting in the cast. We had the American ambassador coming in. We had a Chinese angle coming in. So it just makes it a bigger story. Devil's Playground is a incredibly challenging drama, which was effectively about Catholic abuse in the church, but it was set in '88, therefore it's reasonably timeless. The story, unfortunately, is relevant in many countries around the world for obvious reasons. And Tony Collette's singing in the middle of the cast. So you've got a bunch of things there which allow NBCUniversal to sell that show. And so that's what we try and do all the time, is be very, very local for our broadcasters, because Australian audiences want to see Australia reflected, and then make sure you've got some pointers that allow us to sell.
Can you just tell me a little bit about your background, please, Chris? So
I got in at the bottom, as you'd always encourage most people to do. So I got in below the bottom, work experience for a week at the BBC, and I stayed there about 8 years. So I did a week, and then I came back, did a few more days, and started doing summer holiday jobs, and I would do everything. So I do running on shows, I would do a bunch of finance work, admin work, answering the phones, photocopying, script running, whatever had to be done, you just would do, filling in for different people. And I got to work on as many sporting events as you could think of, because the BBC had all the sports rights at the time. And I left university in '97 and got offered a job at Radio 1. I just worked there in a bunch of production and finance roles, moved across to entertainment, BBC Entertainment. and the same production managing, financing kind of roles. And then I eventually got what I thought was my dream job because of my degrees in politics and a passion for TV. And I moved to Westminster and worked as a unit manager for the live show. So we'd make 7 or 8 live shows a week and about 10 or 12 live radio shows a week, and be responsible for all of the coverage out of Parliament House and all that stuff. So it's pretty kind of fascinating to watch. We work on the election campaigns, and it was that mixture of politics versus that live to air deadline, and then incredibly well researched material because you're talking to the Prime Minister or the politician of the day. So you got to. It wasn't me researching necessarily, but the team around me was. It just bred very early on in my career about the importance of knowing this stuff, of knowing what people are trying to think about as you answer questions, and prepping your presenter for live TV. You can't get it wrong. So I did a very quick BBC, which was great because it allowed you to work cross genre, cross different buildings, different parts of London. It's great. Great way to learn.
And then you immigrated to Australia in 2000 and started working for the ABC.
ABC in Brisbane, actually. Yeah, I came to Melbourne. I couldn't get work in Melbourne. I tried and knocked on every door I could think of. Just before the internet really took off here, it took off anywhere. So it was just in that kind of time where I actually found a job in the newspaper in the Australian for production manager in news, and I applied for the job and did the interview on the phone and got the job, and moved to Brisbane to do that, and then a year later came back down to Melbourne again. So, and then once again, the ABC, a bit like the BBC, if you're in there and you're prepared to move and prepared to work hard, you can get promoted. You can do a good job. And so I got up the tree reasonably quickly. So I went from production managing arts to production managing entertainment, and then production executive. So you run a slate, entertainment, comedy, drama, head of production across the entire slate, and then head of business. And Sandra Levy, who is an astonishing producer, great reputation. She gave me a chance. She just gave me a chance. Okay, well, if you want the job, I'll give you a chance. And then she mentored me, helped me. Then Kim Dalton joined, who came from the AFC and beyond before that, and an incredibly credentialed man and a wonderful human being. And again, he gave me that chance, kept me in this job we didn't need to, and taught me an awful lot. So I was very lucky.
That's what we really need, a lot of mentors for people in the industry.
You all need a bit of luck because this business is tough because it's very competitive. So it's easy to sit on this side of the couch and look back on, hopefully only halfway through a career, but look back on a career and go, that's how it happened. But my word, it's lucky. The BBC work experience was me writing off letters, and I got one. I just did a week, and there's a bunch of luck in that week that allowed me to stay. Me then at the BBC again, I did a little bit of work in a BBC Arts, which set me up for a job when I left university. If I hadn't done that, which was basically stamping invoices, I wouldn't have got the job at Radio 1. It just was those little things. And you can look back at that and go, God, that was lucky.
Yeah.
And the ABC thing was the same. If I hadn't gone for the job or been a different time, I probably wouldn't have got it. I wasn't the best qualified. I just said yes. And then I had a lot of support around me.
And so from the transition from ABC to Matchbox, was that because the opportunity just came there? Did they headhunt you?
They did.
Yes?
They did. Oh, it took a while because I think it's obviously very different being a broadcaster to being a producer. You're on the complete opposite sides of the fence. I think it was complicated because NBCUniversal had just bought in. So I joined in November 2011. They'd bought in May, and so it was still very, very new and early, and no one quite knew what was going on. It was a new challenge. It was interesting. Kim, my boss at the time, was incredibly supportive and said, this is a great opportunity. And it's been a bit tough. First year was tough, but the next 4 years have been fantastic. But very different. My NBCU boss at the moment said, think of it this way, at the ABC, come to the BBC, it doesn't matter. If you do nothing, if you send no emails, no phone calls, do nothing, work will just mount up outside your door. It will just turn up every day. If you do nothing at Matchbox, no one will phone you. Nothing will happen. No shows will be commissioned. Nothing will happen. And I've kept that mantra quite close to me about you've got to be self-generating constantly. You're talking to the right people. You're looking at the right ideas, and you're making sure that your team's happy and got what they need to do their job. At the ABC, and again, it could be the same in any broadcaster or any big business, I guess. There's so much stuff just going on that you haven't got to do anything. Stuff just turns up. My job is about creating work. Creating work as much as I can.
And what advice would you give to a newcomer that wants to get into the industry?
One is being connected. You've got to be in the industry. You've got to be going to things. You've got to know who people are. You've got to then be brave and email people and phone people up and say, could I do a week with you? Most people will say yes if it makes sense, and they'll bring you in. But then you've got to stay connected. You've got to make sure you're not forgotten. You've got to keep in that. So it's about keep going, going. Try and get into writers' rooms. Trying to get into, maternity leave cover, or to, admin, front desk goes on leave, can you cover the phones for 2 weeks? It's that kind of stuff. Can you get into that world? Once you're in there, and we go, oh, you're good. You got a degree, you got this, you got a writer's thing, you've got great talent. Can you read this for us? Can you give some coverage on that book? What do you think about that movie you saw last week? And you start thinking as a creator, whatever skill you might want to do, but in this example, a creator, you go from being a talented amateur to being the start of your professional career.
Yeah, that star quality. We need it.
That's where that little bit of luck kicks in. You can't really manage it, but you can create a bit of your own luck. Right time, right place.
Yes.
And then just keep knocking on doors. Just keep knocking on doors. If you really want to keep knocking on doors, most will give up. They've got to pay the bills. And so they just naturally will. Some won't. Some will get lucky. Some won't give up, and some will be just perfectly positioned. And there'll be a few that will get through. I guess that's just because we're in a competitive industry. What's much easier to turn into something real life is a TV show, because that's what we do, stock in trade. Lots of ideas can come from anywhere. What can we do with it? Feature film is often a passion piece. Australian feature film is quite difficult to finance currently. There's a lot of competition for tiny bits of money. You've got a very hungry TV market currently across Australia and internationally. Lots of volume. We want clever ideas. There's lower risk in TV. It's quicker in TV. Film often is a one-person written thing or creative thing. TV is nearly always a collaboration. So I'd be saying to those people, think about what a company like Princess Pictures does, or what December Media does, or what Fremantle does, or Shine, or Matchbox. What do we all do? We make lots and lots of TV programs. That's what we do. So if you want to get into the business, get into TV. Write some scripts, start to write some ideas down, and then you can get back to your films when you can, when the time is right. If you do it first, it's just going to be a tougher road, I guess. As a broad statement, play percentages as much as you can.
Thank you so much, Chris.
You're welcome.
For today, I really, really appreciate your time with us today for Screenchat. And is there any words of wisdom that you'd like to end off with today?
If you want to write your feature film, if you want to be that bedroom writer, never stop. Never stop the ambition to write or create. It's the best thing in the world. I wish I could do it. I can't. To move in that professional world, in my opinion, it's a better playing TV. You've got more chance, more outlets, more opportunities in TV. It might not be your dream, but you've got more outlets there. It's an easier world in some way, hard in others. And get connected. Just if you're not connected, how do you stand out for that crowd? Find people who are nice. Find people who are smart. Find people who have opinions that we can talk to. That's how you do it. So be connected is the key bit.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.